Let's see what they have to say about the direwolves. The direwolves from Game of Thrones are back.
The howl of a dire wolf hasn't been heard on planet Earth for more than 10,000 years. That's because the species is extinct, or was. Colossal Bioscience
Is it really a direwolf, though? I mean, they probably got close.
is a Dallas-based company that's using genetic engineering to de-extinct long-gone species. And this is the first time Colossal's dire wolf pups, who are now 6 months old, have been seen by the public.
Okay.
Hey Ben, it's Jeff Kluger from Time Magazine. A pleasure to meet you.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what the goal is for de-extincting and rewilding ultimately. Why are you
They're gonna
doing
put him
this
back in the
work?
wild?
It became abundantly clear that we need new tools and technologies for conservation. And so we thought this was a really cool way that we could create value, create impact, inspire people, and then also hopefully thoughtfully rewild some of these species, which apparently will also have ecological benefits to these different potential ecosystems.
To try and do that, Colossal needed to understand dire wolves at a genetic level. The company has documented the process from the beginning and shared this footage with Time for a cover story. So can you tell me a little bit about what went into engineering the dire wolf?
We extracted DNA from 2 fossils that we knew from previous work had
Wow.
some amount of preserved ancient DNA. One was a 13,000-year-old bone, and the other was a 72,000-year-old bone.
72,000-year-old
We
bone.
were able to generate 2 genomes, 2 direwolf genome sequences from that, which we then compared to all the other wolves for which there's already been data generated. And when we do that, we want to figure out where it is that these 2 dire wolves are similar to each other, but different from the other wolves that are out there. And so we come up with this list of genes where they're distinct. Now, our goal in the Dire Wolf Project, just like with all de-extinction projects, is to re-engineer the core traits, the core characteristics that made these extinct species unique and able to fill whatever role that they filled in their ecosystems when they were still alive.
Using this knowledge, Colossal then made 20 modifications to 14 genes in the DNA of common gray wolf cells. These relatively few tweaks to the genetic code produce some big differences. The dire wolf's white coat, large size, characteristic vocalizations like that howling you heard at the beginning of the story, and more. That DNA was transferred to denucleated egg cells, meaning cells without their own genetic material, and then developed into embryos and were then implanted in the wombs of surrogate mothers, who were hound mixed dogs.
We didn't know how big these embryos would grow and wanted to make sure that the surrogate was healthy. So we picked large dogs.
Romulus and Remus, named after the
Oh,
Roman
look at the little
mythological
dog.
twin brothers who
Yeah.
were raised by a wolf, were born on October 1st, 2024. And in January, they were joined by a younger sister that the Colossal team named Khaleesi. Each wolf is on track to grow to as large as 6 feet long and 150 pounds. Colossal
Oh my
isn't
gosh.
planning to reintroduce them to the wild. Instead, the 3 dire wolves will live out their lives on a fenced 2,000-acre preserve. Colossal does not want to disclose this location in order to protect the animals.
I think these are the luckiest animals ever. They will live their entire life on this protected ecological reserve where they have all sorts of space and they have natural denning environment and they have a
So they're not
hut
going
that
back
they
in
can
the
go and
wild.
hide out in if they need to. They have 24-hour
That'd be crazy,
veterinary
though.
care.
Dire wolves aren't the only species on Colossal's de-extinction agenda.
An American company says it has genetically engineered mice so that they have developed some traits like mammoths.
That's
small but
Hamtaro.
potentially important step in a quest to eventually bring back the prehistoric woolly mammoth.
They hope to de-extinct the woolly mammoth as
No
early
shot.
as 2028.
What?
The company is also hoping to bring back the dodo and
I was
the
gonna say, are they gonna bring back the dodo?
Tasmanian tiger. If some of this genetic tinkering feels familiar, it's because Hollywood has been here first. And spoiler alert, we all know that didn't end well.
Things that you saw in a movie 20 years ago that was science fiction might not be science fiction anymore. Funny how that goes.
So naturally, bioethicists have some concerns.
Here, when you're playing with nature, nature usually wins. Nature is much more complicated than the ability of our brains to understand it. Genes do many things. There may be a lot of unintended consequences. Let's say we alter a gene to make extra hair or to make it burn metabolism more, burn fat more. Those genes may do other things in ways that we just don't even understand. So we may create animals that have lots of medical problems. If we start tinkering with genes, we may create a super mouse, a super rat that kills all the other animals around.
But the team at Colossal says their mission to restore extinct species.
There's a new race
is
of
also
super mice
about
coming.
Stopping the disappearance of endangered ones today, as experts predict Earth will lose 30% of its genetic diversity by 2050. Colossal has used techniques learned from the Direwolf project to clone 4 red wolves, a small but important step in fortifying that endangered species. The 4 new wolves could help inject fresh DNA into the red wolf gene pool, which currently suffers from a so-called genetic bottleneck, the result of too few individuals carrying too little genetic variety to keep the species healthy.
Yes, it would be really amazing to see a mammoth. It would be great for the habitats of Tasmania to have a keystone predator.
Yeah, how will they
introduced
actually
into
all
that
reproduce
ecosystem.
though?
But the tools that we're developing on the path to these species have immediate application to species that are not yet extinct. A future that is both biodiverse and filled with people. We should be giving ourselves the opportunity to see what our big brains can do to reverse some of the bad things that we've done to the world already.
There's a huge need to help prevent animals from becoming endangered and going extinct. We need to spend more money on conservation. Particularly now, there's a lot of threats that lands that we have as national parks and as preserves are going to be used for drilling oil, for instance. So there's a lot of habitats where species now live that are going to be under threat. So, and
What's the point of having them be parks anymore?
Efforts.
Do you think they'll reproduce? I don't see why they wouldn't, right? They're like genetically modified dogs. Wolves. Rainsworth, what is going on? You got any cool videos for us to watch? If anyone has a video for us, let us know. Dark videos? Are they a lie though?
Whoa, buddy, we've got a Time magazine that says these dire wolves have suddenly become de-extincted? This is Remus. He's a direwolf, the first to exist in over 10,000 years.
A video about being 30, oh gosh. It's all downhill after that.
Endangered species.
Why is the dire wolves a lie, though.
The idea of it is CRISPR is like the natural defense system that a bacteria can provide against things like viruses. So scientists use two components, from my understanding, Cas9 proteins, which are basically this enzyme that are like a DNA cutting tool. It's like scissors for the DNA. And then using the gRNA, which is guide RNA, it tells the Cas9 how to actually cut this DNA. So the reason why you use CRISPR is you can effectively delete genes, you can insert new genes, or you can modify genes that already exist. And if it sounds crazy to you, I guess a very similar gaming version of this could be like Metal Gear Solid, right? You know those genome soldiers in the first game? A lot of those soldiers are genetically modified. They contain traits from Big Boss, one of the biggest soldiers, the best soldiers at the time. And so implementing the soldiers of a, implementing the genetic structure of or the positive genes from one of the best soldiers in the average person, I guess in the game's theory, led to better soldiers, right? Heightened soldiers that had like the craziest like abilities, right? Because they were just copies. And
what was that getting played on
from
back
what
then?
a normal human could have been. But obviously in scientific land, right, the cool stuff that you can do with CRISPR right now are things like crops, for instance, right? You can make crops resistant to certain diseases, so you can have more bountiful harvests, right? More food for people.
Oh, I got
You
a
can
use for that in
possibly,
Schedule
all right,
1.
treat things like genetic defects before the birth of, children, which again is super controversial. But from what I understand, even things like sickle cell anemia can be treated through the use of CRISPR. So this technology is effectively what they used for Colossal Biosciences.
How do they do that?
So what they did was they found the fossil of a fucking dire wolf, and basically they dug out like this 13,000-year-old tooth, and they got like a 72,000-year-old like bone in the ear to sequence the genome structure of the dire wolf. Then, utilizing things like CRISPR, they identified 20 key genetic differences across 14 different actual genes that were responsible for those specific dire wolf traits, right? Like what makes a dire wolf a dire wolf? So things like just a larger size, things like, your whiter fur, so to speak. And then they use CRISPR to effectively modify this into gray wolf actual cells. And then,
I mean, to me, I guess if you take the closest thing you've got and you give it the distinguishing characteristics of that extinct species, it's not the same exact thing. That's pretty close.
once they had modified these genes, they put them into actual X cells. And of course, then 3 wolf pups came into the world. And yeah, all of a sudden, these pups literally had apparently behavioral traits and the physical, look of extinct dire wolves. And now they're effectively being studied. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how, I guess, scientists have de-extincted an animal. So the thing about it is obviously this would be pretty big news, but it really seems like they're kind of overselling this and they're not really being truthful about de-extincting an animal. Because no, the dire wolves have not come back. According to most of the actual analysis, these are still just gray wolves, except they have more genetic traits that resemble the dire wolf. There's still tons of time of actual genetic changes and actual evolution, actual
it would
differences
take
between the gray wolf
generations and generations and generations
and the dire wolf that just have not been addressed. Okay, these are still 2 very distinct animals. They've just managed to create a slightly more resembling version. It's like taking humans and I guess implementing them with Neanderthal DNA to bring back the original Neanderthals. You might be able to do that.
I mean, it's not the
but
same
with
thing,
what
but you're
they've
making
done
steps
here,
to get there.
It's just like a weird bastardization of something that's kind
It's
of in the
weird.
middle. Now, one of the things that I wanted to kind of research was obviously, why would a company like this get so involved, right? What is the business sense of just bringing back de-extincted animals, right?
True, where would they get money from this? What is their end goal here?
Obviously, there's got to be something money related to it. Now, obviously, these guys have made a fair bit of cash in just, again, being the company that they are and getting investments. So back in 2021, they secured $15 million from just some investors, okay? People from Breyer Capital, guys like Thomas Tull, Tim Draper, all that.
Okay.
And then of course, down the road in 2022, they started to get $60 million in Series A funding. Then they started getting over $100 million and then the Series B funding. And then, of course, finally, around Series C, they ended up getting like 200. So this is big money, okay? 200 million, 100 million here. Their valuation went up to like $1 billion. Like they literally became a company that just effectively jumped up in like value off of all of these like promises of de-extinction. So it's a lot of money that has been put into a company with the super altruistic motive.
Now
Now,
worth 10 billion.
Course, then you started to get into like really crazy spooky shit. Like eventually The Intercept actually ended up reporting that in 2022 the CIA even ended up investing money into it. And you might be like, how do we know the CIA did it? Well, if you ever watched a video that I made about like Apple versus like the Israeli like cybersecurity companies, you would know of one organization known as IQT, which is actually the investment arm of the Central Intelligence Agency. So they put in a lot of money into various sectors for the ultimate goal of global innovation to secure the United States, right? That's how the CIA works. They give money to people who I guess they feel contribute to the security of the country. So when I started to look at things like their investments and everything, at least from a personal perspective, it really does feel like at the actual surface, they want to bring back the woolly mammoth. But any company that's involved in things like genetic sciences,
Are we gonna use
fucking
woolly
around with
mammoths in
DNA,
war?
has me wondering if there's like maybe military aspects, especially when you've got like the attention of organizations like the Central Intelligence Agency. Just to kind of tangent it off, one of the things that I was watching like the other day was Joe Rogan again, right? He was talking about these allegedly like Chinese DNA babies where CRISPR was used to like modify them into becoming better than average humans. Now again, I don't know the true reality of it.
What?
I'm just saying this because I heard about it. I'm doing
China's
more
making a hybrid race.
research.
Oh,
It's part
God.
of a bigger video later on down the week where we're looking into like these edited Chinese babies. This conspiracy,
Oh my
conspiracy
gosh.
stuff's doing really well on the channel, and I feel like a lot of you guys are interested in the same shit that I am, which is why I'm so dead on covering it, because I do like talking about this stuff. It's super duper interesting. But it is one of those things where I wonder what the actual goal of a company like Colossal Biosciences really is. And I don't think it's just to bring back dead animals. Okay, that's just way too altruistic for a company that's raised up this much money and has gotten the attention of some really interesting investors. Now, honestly, when it comes to a lie, did Colossal Biosciences do a colossal lie on bringing back the dire wolf? Which
China's
is
insane.
The version they have has turned out to basically be like a gray wolf for most of the reason. That is a great comparison. It's kind of like if you took like a chimpanzee and I think like a human being, if you took something that was 90% similar to human beings and you took like maybe some human elements and implemented it into a different species, and so whatever you created resembled human beings more, obviously, let's be completely honest here, whatever they would generate would not resemble a human being, which is similar to what it appears in this situation, right? It's a gray wolf that is it's got more traits of a dire wolf, but it ain't exactly a dire wolf. So for me, I would consider this to be a little bit more misinformation-y than anything. I do, however, love the actual social media. This is an actual social media post from the guy running the account where they go onto Wall Street Bets and the fucking moderators on Wall Street Bets are like, why should this post stay up? Why the fuck do a bunch of wolves on a low effort graph have to do with gambling on the market? I'm glad they just say it's gambling. Don't even bother answering. Go AstroTurf your garbage somewhere else. And the Colossal guys were like, don't share this meme. It made the Wall Street Bet mods really upset. I just love the fact that I can always agree with, even if I don't agree with what they're promoting here and how they're saying it, I can always agree that Reddit mods are completely overzealous individuals. But yeah, it's the dire wolf, man. Apparently they wanted to say that this fucking majestic beast ended up coming back, when in reality, no, it didn't. This is just, I guess, a way for them to gain more funding and more interest, right? And honestly, I really feel like this is just one of those like big tech businesses that are either around just to raise money and ultimately not really produce anything in the long run of substance, or
Sounds about right.
in my opinion, at least if I was to apply my tinfoil hat, I'm pretty sure that a company like this, when it gets the interest of an organization like the Central Intelligence Agency, has probably doing something more than just bringing back dead animals with the CRISPR technology and the gene editing technology they're using. I somehow think that a lot of the technology here might be used for ultimately more nefarious purposes.
Wait, are they making Spartans now? Is this how Halo's gonna start? They're gonna make super soldiers? Oh shit. They're funding that so they can figure out how to make the super soldiers.
Or maybe could possibly be used on human beings down the road for ultimately, in my opinion, nefarious purposes. But yeah, according to a lot of the news that came out and the de-extinction of this animal, I don't really believe personally that there's actually been a de-extinction. I think if anything, this has been the most colossal oversell of something like this. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, all I really wanted to say, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.